Hello and welcome to our Film Ireland podcast. I'm Paul Farren. I'm very privileged to be here with Nick Kelly, whose debut feature film, The Drummer and the Keeper, won Best First Feature in Galway and is opening on... When is it opening, Nick?
It's Friday the 8th of September.
Thanks very much for coming here. I'd like to start with talking about your music career because your film career is relatively recent, but you're known to a lot of people through your band, The Fat Lady Sings.
Yeah, I mean, I am just back, and I'm a little bit hoarse, in fact, from still from the Electric Picnic, so you'll have to forgive me. But I did a show there about how rock and roll teaches you how to make films, and I kind of think they're the same skill set almost, or the same instincts. So I think you learn a huge amount about things like rhythm and structure, and also collaborative making of art, so that you've got you loads of other people who are helping you make a thing. I think you learn an awful lot from rock and roll that helps you in films. So the things are related. So yeah, I think my all of the relative lack of success that I had over the years in music is now paying off, I think, in film.
Would you say the collaborative aspect can be quite different, though?
I think I think I was a very poor collaborator when I was younger, as lots of people who feel very driven to do their art are when they are young, because you think you have to take complete responsibility for every aspect of this thing that you're making. So you can't. I mean, unless you're Prince or somebody who plays every instrument and records everything. You need to work with other people. So there's things you can't do, but you bring the other people in and then you sort of micromanage them. And what happens is that people fight back for a while, and then it's like they're drowning or something. They suddenly relax because they've just realized, okay, he doesn't want me to bring any of my own personality or humanity to this. He's just going to tell me what to do. So I'm just going to be a meat puppet. I'm just going to do exactly what he tells me to do. And it's kind of very relaxing because they've now ceded any form of creative investment in your project. They just say, okay, I'll just do whatever you want me to do. And so after a while, and in my case I would say quite a long while, an embarrassingly long while, you realise that you are getting in the way of making a better record, because anybody who works on your record is not you, is going to change your record. And the only thing you can do is first of all choose really well people that you think get the same thing that you want to get. And then after that, you've just got one really simple choice: is am I going to empower them to change it for the better, or am I going to shackle them and force them to make it worse? And that's the only choice you have. It won't be what you have in your head. If you're lucky, and if you choose well, and if you don't get in the way, it'll be much better than what you think it's going to be. So that's a really slow learned lesson I have from music. But coming into film, I think it's been incredibly helpful to me, because, casting on both sides of the camera is kind of literally, it's not just the most important, it kind of is the only skill you need as a director, is choose really good collaborators. I think the choice, I think Kate McColgan, who I met on the Catalyst course, and you had to pair up with producers. I mean, an enormous amount of the reason that the film works so well is because she then pulled in this brilliant array of people to work with me.
Just to qualify, the Catalyst is the award scheme that IFBs that have run twice now, and the last one was 2014, and you were one of the 3 films chosen. So tell us, elaborate on that for our listeners so they understand what that entailed and how it helped, and gave you kind of parameters to work with.
Well, I think the thing about the Catalyst, the first Catalyst was done, I think, in something like 2006 or 2005, a long time ago. And you had to go on 2 weekends of mentorship, and then you had to apply for it, and then you had to do the thing. And I missed one of the weekends I was away, so I didn't do it. And then they made 3 films, and then there was a 7-year break. They didn't do it for 7 years. And in the meantime, I'd made Shoe, which was had got to the last 10 for an Oscar. And I kind of thought, oh, I'm away. I'm totally going to get the money to make a feature film. And then I spent several years kind of not quite, like getting development money and getting, people liking a lot of the ideas I was coming up with, but not actually funding me to make a film. And then when the Catalyst thing was announced again, I was so on my radar. I thought, this is my one chance to jump past all of the gatekeepers. It's just a simple thing. Are you one of the 3 best projects that enters it? And so that was it was in 2014. They announced it, and so I actually went in with 2 different projects because I was so determined to not mess up. And I think there was 400 people who went to the 2 seminars, most of whom were writer-directors. And you had to pair up with a producer. That was also on the course. You couldn't be a director-producer. And so there was 2 weekends of seminars. And in between the 2 weekends, there was 10 days. And on the first weekend, I realised everybody here knows each other. And I don't, because I'm not really that long in film. And half the producers, there was 40 producers and there's like 360 writer directors. So it was like the Hunger Games, And I realised that most of the producers are already paired with somebody, so in that 10 days, I took a reference out. I researched every single producer, and I kind of identified kind of about 10 that I thought were the most interesting and capable and had the most interesting CVs. And I tried to meet them all in the 10 days in between. So I met, I think, 7 of them for coffee. And I found 2 to work with on 2 different projects. And Kate McColgan of Calico was one of them. And that was then, so we then, I think of the 400 people who were on the course, 89 projects were submitted and 9 were shortlisted and 3 were chosen.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, but it's the best odds I could possibly have had,
What was nice, though, what would you say the advantages of the Catalyst were? I mean, obviously it's a low budget, but so it focuses you in certain ways. But that, in its way, is also part of it, gets a creative fire going.
I mean, there's a bunch of things that are really interesting about it. I think one of the things is it is low budget, but it's been negotiated in a way that everybody is participating financially in it. So if the films happen to be incredibly successful, everybody on the crew and the cast participates, not just the producer and the director. I think by definition, because it's a low budget thing, the only people who really work on one of those projects are people who are really into it. And, Kate had huge numbers of contacts on crews because she'd been on crews for years, because also, at that point she hadn't produced a feature. And so, and she just, I think what happened is we got incredibly good people to work for us for like a pittance on this project. So that's so when you call it, I was going to say, in a sense, it's hard to talk about the budget because there's not much money, but the on paper, but the value of the people that you're getting is a multiple of the money that you're spending. And we pulled every other kind of favor. So many friends and musicians that I contacted let me use their music for like really, really tiny fees. We got almost all of our locations for nothing. And actors
came out of your own music background a bit as well. Would you agree?
I think it's certainly. I think 2 things. John Walsh, who did the score, I knew from advertising, and so John was always doing the score. But all the different songs, because the world that they're in is a world of music. I did write a couple of songs, or I wrote one with John. I wrote one by myself for the film. But I also, I looked at all the scenes and I could see where we needed tunes, and anytime I was walking around a couple of years ago, the Electric Picnic, there was a brilliant drum and bass band, and I got their number, and then I just called them up and I said, there's a little bit that I need something for, and people were incredibly generous. So I think it's kind of amazing how much it's a funny thing, low budget filmmaking, because if you have enough and if you have a project people want to work on, I almost think you even things like rehearsal before, like we had all of the cast for several weeks before, and that's to do with their generosity and their agents' generosity, because we didn't really have enough money.
I saw somewhere you had them for 6 weeks.
Something like that. And, we embedded them in autism drama groups and brought them into St. Pat's and doing all these kinds of things. And actually, if I was, from my lips to his ears, if I am working on a big budget feature in the future, I know one thing that I'm unlikely to get is 4 or 6 weeks rehearsal with my cast. I know that, and I won't get a chance to do that work. And that's been a huge part of the film's success, is that work, all the work they did, and how well we all knew our story and our characters. By the time we hit the set, we were like bulletproof on that stuff.
How long was your shoot?
20 days.
20 days, which is tight, very tight. I actually happened to buy your set one day. We were coming down, and I was on Lisa Kelly, who's a wonderful production manager. Wasn't she a line producer or production manager?
On this she's production manager.
She's great, but it was palpable. There was a lovely energy in the air, and it's nice you can feel that. Even so we left quickly because we're just outsiders.
It's a big thing, and it's like people talk about casting, and I mean this really seriously. It's casting on both sides of the camera. It's like your crew, and you're by definition the least experienced person on set. I mean, that's kind of a cliche to say it, but it's true. I mean, up till the time I directed this, in terms of films, I had been on a set I directed one day in Delphine, one day in Why the Irish Dance That Way, and sort of about 3 days on Shoes. That's 5 altogether. And then I've done, probably I've done another probably maybe 20 days on ads.
Well, to rewind, your first experience as a filmmaker is pretty much as a writer for advertising, copywriter.
Yeah.
You've written 1 or 2 quite famous Guinness ads, am I right?
Yeah, I stumbled in after I split The Fat Lady Sings. I was trying to think of something I could do, and at the time in music in the 90s, advertising was like this kind of satanic thing that nobody would go near. But I think I'd been sufficiently beaten down and my morale crushed that I was open to anything, And I went and I just had lunch with people and said, what should I do? Should I work in PR or should I work for a charity? And somebody just said, you should try and be a copywriter. And I had always written for a living in one way or another. I'd written songs, I'd sometimes written articles, and I'd reviewed video games for a couple of years, and so I just stumbled into advertising, and it was just incredibly fun for me. And I found that I'd never gone to art school, and I'd only been in terrible videos, but having never really had a
great learning experience.
It was a huge learning experience, because in a way, much more than any screenwriter, when you are a copywriter in an ad, first of all, you choose the directors, you audition directors. You shortlist and you audition like 4 top directors at least. You choose the director. You work really closely with the directors. You go to all the castings. I was in the casting. I was the only person in the casting from the agency or the crew. Who, when Michael Fassbender walks in London, I think there's no genius for me to think this guy's pretty good. But that's an experience. You go to all the shoots. Like I wrote my first short film on a borrowed computer in Iceland on the set of Tom Crean. And you go to all the edit. You spent all of your time in the post. Like I spent on Tom Crean, I would have spent 6 or 7 weeks in London in a post house. And Tarsem, the director, was only there for 2 days.
That advertising level, it's almost on a Hollywood scale of immersion in terms of the system of how things operate.
Well, I mean, if you look at the budgets for any one of those Guinness ads. So I wrote 5 Guinness ads. That would be like big Guinness ads, and then I wrote the launch ad for Walker's Crisps, where Roy Keane mugs Gary Lineker and steals his crisps. Yeah,
that was a good one.
And different other things, and the budgets in a lot of those ads would have been over $1 million. Like 3 times our budget for 60 seconds. 40 seconds. So by definition, the level of production value. So the skills of anybody, so the production design on Tom Crean, if you ever look in the background of any of those things, if you look in the back of the pub, there's a calendar, and there are hand-tied flies, which would have been true to the 1920s in Ireland, like that you would go into your pub, and if you were a fisherman, you could buy flies for you. somebody has put those on the notice board. Now, to what extent?
Just so that you won't have to notice them.
So you won't have to notice them, but it's there. But you do catch stuff. So that's stuff. Just unless you don't want to learn about making films, working in advertising is an incredible education.
Tell me this now: the seeds of the story itself. I know it comes from your music to some degree, and also from your own personal experience having a son with Asperger's would have been something because you're quite close to it. How did that? I mean, obviously that's where the inspiration came, but could you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, what I really wanted to do from the word go is kind of almost a different thing, which is that I've always felt that we all have a sort of a theory about who our friends are in life, and we often choose our friends. We curate our friends quite carefully for their loveliness and their amusingness and their
putting up with us.
And all sorts of things. And then every so often a terrible crisis hits, and really through no fault of our own, all of those carefully curated friends are useless. They can't do the thing that you need at that moment, because you're sort of a different person to the one that because you also curated yourself. And it's only in moments of crisis that you realise that actually your idea of yourself, your press releases that you've been churning out about who you think you are all bogus, and actually the person you are is a bit different. And at that moment, at the very moment when your theoretical best friends are useless, out of the woodwork, I have often found, and I've often noticed in other people's lives, the weirdest people emerge who actually are helpful. And that's actually what I want to make the film about, is unlikely friendship. Having that thought in my head, I did think a lot about rock and roll. I like, my pitch was like, the way everybody thinks that drummers are crazy and everybody thinks goalkeepers are crazy. So actually, if you are suffering from a mental health issue or, have a neurodiverse condition, going into one of those areas is quite smart, because you can sort of pass, nobody notices. And I think in rock and roll, I had absolutely often encountered the behaviour that's tolerated in rock and roll is much broader than it would be in other areas of life, and it's even not just tolerated but encouraged. People want you to be wild and crazy. So I think at some level it's quite a safe place to go if you're behaviourally doing working in a wider bandwidth. But it's also then, I think it can be very triggering as well. So I kind of had seen people, including people I think didn't really realise they had an issue, who were, and the yawing up and down of like real excitement and then real downs afterwards and everything. And you'd see sometimes people who were clearly had a mental health issue. So I was very aware of that. And then on the other side, I have a child on the spectrum, and that world, what you're really trying to do is everything outside your front door you can't predict, because you're not instinctively picking up all these signals that the world, a lot of the world does pick up. So that's where the anxiety comes from. So to kind of combat the anxiety, typically people with autism fall into really rigid routines, because those are safe and they're not just mantra-like, they're predictable. They are a way of getting through the day and getting through your life, which isn't going to suddenly yaw into something that's really terrifying and different. So I think that the intersection between a character who is going up and down, and somebody is going in a straight line, straight across, and trying to keep, incredibly almost blinkered way of approaching the world. I thought that was a really interesting and potentially explosive mixture of two characters if you wanted to explore unlikely but redemptive friendship.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much in terms of the plot because we don't give any spoilers away. But by the nature of, we agree that our keeper character is the one who's the more stable and solid of the two. He kind of grounds our drummer.
Well, I think the thing is that everybody has got strong points and weak points. And in our film, each of our two characters they've got at least one clear weak point, but they do have strong points as well. And I think the interesting thing is to what extent you can be forgiven your weak points through your strong points, or whether somebody else's strong points can help your weak points. And I think that's a lot of stuff in our film. A lot of stuff's about that.
Yeah, as Billy Wilder and I.L. Diamond said, nobody's perfect. How did you find, where was your head at when you were trying to cast for The Keeper? What did you think you were looking for, or were you just hoping you'd find something? Was there much preparation asked of the actors going into the audition?
I think it's we cast for a very long time. That's the first thing. We cast for 6 months, looking for the two main characters. I mean, we have a big cast, so all along I was looking, and we're very, very blessed at this moment in Ireland in the last few years that there's a really genuinely great critical mass of high standard of film acting. So it's kind of a pleasure, and it's every day you go to a casting, it's so interesting who comes in and what they bring. So I never am bored with that. I felt we'd be in terms of preparation, I think the biggest thing probably is, and I think we directors have to be careful that we don't do this to actors, is that you can go to the cliche with stuff like this incredibly quickly. So I didn't really want. I didn't really want to tell people. I preferred them to use the words on the page, and find their own stuff in it. Like a lot of it's to do with energy, because you can teach people. You can teach people. If you've access to somebody for a long time, you can. We shared people with them. We introduced them to lots of people who, in both those situations, and could give them a first-hand sense of what either having, a serious mental health issue was like, or being on the autism spectrum was like. And we did a lot of that. I think what you're mainly looking for in casting, though, is an energy and an inkling that you think they are on the same wavelength as you. That's as best I can put it.
I find that it's hugely important. The talent is great, but if the rest of the working relationship isn't going to work, it makes things very difficult. You need that as well.
I think you become really good at. I think you do make those decisions carefully, because you are going to. You need the person to be on the same page as you, and you need to think that you're going to be able to build this together, so that this is, and you're going to spend a lot of time together in uncomfortable climactic situations and in raw situations. You're going to talk about a lot of things that are very personal. So you need to feel you can have that conversation. You can go there with those people. So those are funny judgments to make. I mean, you meet people a couple of times, but your body makes all the more important decisions in life generally. Yeah. In art, it's not your brain, it's your body, just your gut instinct. It's so important. I don't trust interviews. Don't trust interviews with me. Don't trust this one. Because people don't. I 100%
agree.
No, because I can give you my theory about what I think I'm doing. Yeah. But a lot of the decisions I'm making they're very much. I'll post-rationalize it.
Yes,
but I may not be being completely honest. It's an awful lot of it's just instinct.
It does bring into thing that the word director at times is not the best defining of what that job is, because you don't want to be directing as such. You want to find someone who already has a good sensibility in themselves.
I think you should be. It's almost like what you are as a liberator. I think what you want to do is you want to choose people who like pigeons or like eagles, people who can carry your story, and then you want to let them free, and they want to go to a place that you actually can't get up that high yourself. So that's literally what you want to do. I mean, a lot of the time when I'm on set mostly for the first take, I won't say anything, and very often, I mean, I don't know what, but like an awful lot of the time, most of the time perhaps, what happens is better than what I was going to suggest. And then if it isn't, or if I don't, if there's something else I want to try, because I think I'm always going to be interested in what you. If you're an actor, I'm always going to be interested in what you're going to bring to me. Like I'm greedy for that, and I think that buys you buys you the space then where if you've got an idea, you can it'll be taken back in good grace, and they'll really try to see it your way as well, and you'll try, so you both you work together, but it's very much like it's like a kind of opening. It's like opening presents takes rather than than everybody terribly worrying. It's I love being on set. It's so exciting. It's so much fun.
Which did you find more difficult to cast? The keeper or the drummer?
Well, the bizarre thing about the casting was we had seen lots of people. We'd seen really good people for both those roles, really good people. But I didn't feel we quite were there, and I'd seen, somebody showed me a couple of things that Dermot had been in, and I thought his energy was really interesting. So I said, could we see him? It was just coming up to Christmas. In fact, it was the last sort of working week before Christmas, and Maureen Hughes, our casting director, said, there's this guy coming back from Los Angeles who's just back for Christmas to see his family, but he could come in, if you like, and read with Dermot, so you could, just if you want to see him as well. And I said, no, brilliant, because we need somebody to come in and read the part. So Dermot and Jacob came to the casting together, and they had never met each other, and we had never met either of them. And
that was a coup.
It was just a huge stroke of luck. I think even if I had seen them individually if I'd seen either, I think I would, in each case, I'm pretty sure I would have got it.
You would have felt that they would have been good together.
But I mean, it was just seeing the two of them together, like literally, myself and Kate, we walked out of the thing, we thought, that was kind of great. And then we looked at the tapes, and the next day we said, okay, those two, we should cast those two. And and that was after like 6 months. Wow. So, and it was right at the end, like, because we were booked in to start filming in 8 weeks, So that's luck. That's kind of like one of those happy accidents. But it's particularly seeing them together, actually, because there was also they themselves. They were very generous with each other just in that casting. Like, I can't really explain it. It was just great to see them together. Really. It made the decision very easy.
And obviously a big shout out to Maureen Hughes for putting up with you for 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that the actors, that sort of generation or semi-generation of actors that she's identified and helped develop, and along with other people. That's a huge, like, everybody talks about the film, Irish film being in a good space at the moment, and I really think it is. Yeah. In the sense of, like, there's not just like an Irish film that you like every 3 years. There's like 3 Irish films that you like every year, or 5, yes, or 6. And I think a huge amount of that is to do with the acting talent. I think that even from when I was casting Shoe, and I love my casting in Shoe, and I did see some other really good people who we didn't cast in Shoe, but I felt
Peter Coonan again.
Yeah.
Nice role.
Oh no, he's great, Peter. It was because like, obviously I knew Peter ever since Shoe, and he's been my mate since Shoe, because he was and him and Pat, again, there was such a relationship that came. It was much harder to get the two of them out. They were very separate, but again, it was their energies, their contrasting energies in Shoe. But Peter was, when we were the role of Toss, who's like the somewhat caught in the middle bass player in the drummer's band, and he was doing one of the 1916 plays. So he had a moustache that he had to wear for the play, and he couldn't shave it off because for the shooting days, it was just and we had to wrap him early, doing all that stuff. So we just decided, okay, his moustache is going to have to be part of his character. So it's almost had its spin-off series itself. We wardrobed him then. We said we have to make him look like he kind of really, in his heart, he's kind of a Doobie Brothers kind of fan. He's like a sort of retro. He's one of those hipsters, but who's gone like deep retro.
I'd take on a really microscopic on the hipster analogy. Then you went, let's get the hipster thing really right, and talk a big one up for the Tasha wears.
I know, and it's a proper moustache. Like it is model zone. It's not a prosthetic.
It's a great granddaddy job.
It is. Yeah.
Again, great performance all around. One person that stuck out for me, and forgive me for not remembering their name, was the coach.
So Adrian Hudson, who plays the coach and sort of the care worker. I mean, he's an incredibly
very nice performance.
It's a brilliant performance, and I'm really glad you bring it up, because for understandable reasons, everybody talks about Dermot and Jacob, who are their individual performances and their knitting together of that relationship is the film. But all around, I've been really lucky with the other roles, and in particular, Eric, he's the figure who literally straddles the two worlds, in the sense that he runs the mixed ability football game, which brings them together. But he's also the person through whose eyes we, the audience, can judge how things are going, because by definition, Dermot's view of the world is somewhat off kilter. Gabriel's view, the drummer, and by definition, Christopher, the goalkeeper's view of the world is somewhat off kilter. So Eric, who knows them both, and he calls it a lot about, just because you're bipolar doesn't mean you have to be an arsehole. Yeah, and I think that's really, I think he's a brilliant actor. He's really, I think he so knows that character, and he's such heart in his performance, and he's so anti-preachy, which is really important, I think.
He's a kind of subtle mentor in the background, but he never actually shows his hand, but his hand is doing lots of work.
Well, the thing about anybody who works in those spaces, if you meet them, and I meet them a lot, is it's hard yards. Like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you do it for a long time. The people who do well and do it for a long time, they have their own coping mechanisms. They draw their own lines. They make their own. They have their own personal contract with their role. So I'm totally happy with this. I'm totally happy with this. I'm not happy with that. And they work out a way that they can be helpful and within. And I think that I've seen that. That sort of it's a sort of an enduring good humor. It's there won't be a perfect solution, but what we're going to do is good enough, and that's really important for people. Perfectionism is kind of not just the enemy of filmmaking, but it can be the enemy of your mental health as well. And what we all need to be is kind and forgiving and not sweating the small stuff. And I think Eric's pretty great at catching that quality.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the whole message for me of the film was that everyone deserves to be given a chance, and that, as you say, nobody's perfect, but we can all help each other fill in the gaps.
Well, I really believe that. I mean, it's funny because the thing about the film is it's a funny film, and it's, I think, a kind of a quite pacey film and quite an upbeat film in a lot of ways. It does deal with some issues that are difficult issues, but I've one of the things I really, people would say, well, it's quite issuesy, isn't it? Like the thing is, I sort of don't really buy that it is, because issuesy suggests that it's like it's way over there, and I'm of course not actually mentally ill myself as a viewer, so I wouldn't be interested in that. But the fact is, we're all 1 degree of separation away from this, and if you're not like one of the 1 in 4 people who is having or will have treatment for mental health issue, or one of the 1 in 65 people who has autism in Ireland, your cousin is, your brother is, your mum is, or your next door neighbour is. So we're all like in this together. And I mean, there are other things some of us are better at than others. So I kind of think being open to the frailties of people and being forgiving of the frailties allows you to release the gifts that other people have to give you, and I really believe that.
I thought it was unapologetically upbeat, and I thought that was one of the things I did like about it. And why not? Why shouldn't it be?
Well, I mean, I think it's funny. I mean, this is where you get into the kinds of films that you want to make, or the kind of film you want to make at any given moment. I mean, and I can't say that I always will want to make exactly films like that. But, like when I was thinking about films that I really love, they're quite, I think it's hard to be warm and cool at the same time. So, like, I kind of think I'm cleaving towards the warm, and I love Juno, I love Billy Elliot, and I loved About a Boy, and films like that.
So they'd be close cousins of it.
They're all. If I don't know that each of those films has its own aesthetic and ours has our own aesthetic as well, but I think I like the feels of those movies, and I get us. I think we're more in those spaces than in some other spaces.
So I see you're in London Film Festival as well.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant thing.
Fantastic.
It's just happened it's all kind of happened quite quickly, because it's like warfare. I always say that, you the intense moments of activity and then long bouts of kind of waiting around for something to happen. And, and after we were sort of really finished the post in like sort of February, and we were kind of thinking about what we would do. And then we went to Galway, and literally the day before we went to Galway, we'd been talking to Element, and we signed an Ireland and UK distribution deal with Element. Then we went to Galway. So that was the Thursday we signed the deal. On the Friday we screened in Galway and got like an incredible reaction, I can say. I mean, we got a standing ovation. We had people in floods of tears. We had people standing up, giving I Am Spartacus, like speeches from the stalls up to us, and that was an amazing thing. And then on the Sunday, which actually was genuinely a bonus as opposed to the main point, but it was like we won the Best Irish First Feature. So that was, and then on the Tuesday, I went into a meeting in Element, which I thought was just like sort of meet and greet, and there was 8 people in the room, and they said, we should go in September. There's a slot in September that would really work. So it's all been incredibly fast. And then the London Film Festival, we suddenly were up and running in Ireland and in cinemas in Ireland, like very, very soon now. And then the London Film Festival, which is in October, they came back and said, well, listen, we'd really like you to come there. So that's kind of incredibly harmonious for us. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm really looking forward to that first step out of the country, because I don't think there's nothing Irish about this film at all. I mean, we shot it around Dublin. There isn't a single phrase in it that is Irish. There's not a single... I'm really interested in making films about humans, not about Irish humans.
On that note, Nick, I'd like to say thanks very much. We'll hope your film does really well.
Thank
here
you.
And abroad.
Thank you.
And keep up that universal storytelling.
I'm doing my very best.
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers, Bob.